Right. Aloha, everyone, whether you're watching live or watching this later. I felt inspired to share this with you after Queen Elizabeth passed away on Thursday, the 8th. I decided to look into the charts to see what was going on in the cosmos, what was going on in the stars, and was there any guidance for humanity? And the more I looked into it, the more in awe I was, and I decided I want to share this. So if you're watching this now with me or later, I believe that there is a message for us in the transmission of the stars, especially on days when world leaders are born or pass away, or when we have big world events. There's always a reason to kind of look and see where this is pointing humanity. And there were other astrologers who actually predicted, when we looked at what was happening right now with the moon and the sun, there was already predictions that we were going to want to look at leadership, world leadership around the globe during this time this week. So very interesting that the Queen's passing comes on this day. So I made a little slide presentation for us to follow, and I'm going to share that. Let's see. Okay. Awesome. Share screen. There we go. Beautiful. Hi, Tyson. I wanted to dedicate this transmission to all my Indigenous brothers and sisters, my Standing Rock family. I really prayed hard about how to share my heart and this message today from a place of the heart, because it's a message about the heart. And so I don't want to go into judging, worshiping, condemning the Queen Elizabeth, or even the whole monarchy. We can look through history and see what the British monarchy has done in humanity, what role they have played. And I will say that I believe a leader knows what's going on in the kingdom. And under this rule, which is coming to light now in the world, where the stories of Indigenous children who were in residential schools is coming out. So people are beginning to know the truth. More and more of an awakening is happening to know the truth in things. And so I know that all around the world right now, there are some people who worship the Queen that are mourning and are looking through the lens of that Queen kind of monarchy worship place of worshiping a ruler. And then there are Indigenous brothers and sisters and people that are having a very different experience with this. And so I want to dedicate this and honor them in that. And I'm not going to use this time to go into the history and the stories of the past. That those are powerful and important. And if you want to be referenced to that, you can absolutely look into that. And I encourage you to look into the residential schools and the history of that, and how we can play a part in transitioning in a good way towards the future, as well as honoring the stories of the past. So to begin, I titled this, May All Queens Rise in Love, because with the death of this queen and the transmission that's in the stars, this is all about an invitation for our own sovereignty, and for us all to really drop into living from a place of our hearts and a place of freedom, a place of unity. And so with the passing of the queen, we want to look and see both the shadows of rulership, the shadows of this, the stars and what's happening in the stars, as well as the highest frequency where we can point ourselves in a good way. So what we're going to do today is we're going to look at where the planets were, and we're going to look at the shadow aspects or the fear victimization frequencies of that to see, okay, what do we need to be aware of, and where had we had rulers and governments and leaders in the world that are leading from a place of the shadow, from fear victim frequencies. And so how can we be aware of that and shift into a place of living from the heart and freedom and move in a good way forward? How can we use this as a tipping point? And there are so many ways that the stars tell us that we are in a place of the tipping point, not only with this, but with several different transits and things that have happened in the years that are pointing us toward this tipping point that we're in. Okay, so let's look at Queen Elizabeth and the death date. In the original astrology, we used a person's conception, birth, and death as three major points in a person's life that told us the story of their life. Of course, there's plenty of other points in their lives that can tell us a story, but these are the three prominent. And when people like Rudolf Steiner and different philosophers and astrologists have began to study great world leaders, world events, the beginning dates of world wars and things like that, certain dates of when things were invented, we begin to see a story that's written in the stars that's mirrored in humanity in this way. So we can start to pinpoint things and map things out in this way. So what we're going to look today at is Queen Elizabeth's death. She was born April 21st, 1926, when the sun was in Aries. So her sun sign is in Aries. And what do we know about Aries? I will also say that if you're in this circle with me, then you know that I resonate and use the sidereal astrology system. So we're not talking about the tropical system today, where I use the sidereal system, which uses the mathematics and the calculations of exactly where the planets are now, not the tropical system that uses a map of where the planets were over 2,000 years ago. And if you want to know more about that, I have a whole video on the history of the stars, the story of the zodiac, that I can send you, that you can dive into. So today we're looking at the sidereal chart of Queen Elizabeth. Died September 8th, I look at that, I put 1922, you all. That's hilarious. She did not die in 1922. She died in 2022 with his sun in Leo. And so this is what we're going to look at. She is born under the sun of Aries. She dies under the sun of Leo. The sun in Aries is the beginning of the zodiac. It is the first in our story of the zodiac of the 12, and it begins. So it is a sign that initiates leadership, or people that are beginning something, but often it's a sign of leadership, and Leo is also a sign of leadership. They're both signs that point us towards leadership. So that in itself is interesting. And you can look at this chart later. If you're watching the replay, you can freeze the screen and kind of look here to see the zodiac. And everything here shows us the sun and each different placement here of where the planets are. For today, we're going to dive into just a few aspects of it, because when I looked into the gene keys of this date, which is mostly what we're going to look at today, there's just a beautiful map and web that points us towards the heart, and it's potent. So when the queen died, the sun was in Leo. The sun is in Leo right now. Venus is also in Leo, and the midheaven was in Leo. I'm going to go back one more and show you this. The sun here is in Leo, Venus is in Leo, the midheaven is in Leo. So that tells us a lot. The moon is in Aquarius, which is a sign of humanity, okay? Which is originally why astrologers were looking at, ooh, something is happening with humanity as a whole right now with this full moon in the sign of rulership, leadership. So let's look at what in humanity is going to be affected by leadership right now with this full moon that we're going through. The Saturn is in Capricorn, Mercury's in Virgo, Jupiter's in Pisces, and then we're going to look at the very end at the south and the north nodes, the Libra Aries transits that that mirror each other. So Leo is a fire element that's ruled by the sun. Okay, Leo rules the heart, the part of the body that is the heart, and our spine. Okay. At the highest frequency, Leo is here to light up the world, lead from the heart, inspire people, embody that heart, okay? We've just transited and moved through the season of Cancer. We're more about halfway through Leo season right now. In the season of Cancer, we go into our inner world. Cancer is the rib cage that holds the heart of God, the heart of Christ. And so in that season, we're doing all the inner work. So that's where we're talking about nurturing our inner world, which is why they talk about cancers being nurturers, right? And emotional in that way, like, because if we go into our inner world, we're going to be dealing with emotions. And I just wanted to preface that because Cancer then guides us into the season of Leo, where if we've done our internal work, we are going to be vibrating at a higher frequency. We are going to be living from the heart more, which leads us into the Leo season, which is all about vibrating from the heart, living from love, okay? Leo's ruled by the sun, the great creator, so it mirrors that. And in the zodiac of Leo, we have one of the 4 royal stars, which is Regulus. So let's talk about why is Leo associated with kingship, queenship, rulership. The sign, the star Regulus, is called the Watcher of the North. And it was also associated with the Lion of Judah. So it ruled the heavens in this way. Then we have so many leaders who were born under the sign of Leo and or took rulership in that time of Leo. So Leo really represents royalty in this way. I use a type of astrology called astrosophy, which is the wisdom of the stars aligned with Christ. And when we go back to the life of Christ and look at the stars, that's when we can really see how the Magi began the story of our zodiac as we know it. And Leo is associated with royalty because it's associated with King David. So King David is associated here with Leo, and King David's line leads the bloodline that leads to Jesus, to Yeshua. So that's a little tidbit that kind of explains why do we look at Leo as a sign of royalty? That's why. So with every zodiac, I like to look at the shadow, where we're still in victimization, or in the shadow, the fear vibration. And then what's the highest aspect? The astrology, as it's evolved in the years, has become very fear-based, like religion. And I choose not to use astrology in that way. I choose it to look at it as a way of awareness and contemplation, not to own it in a specific way, and definitely not to use it as a way to control, manipulate, or fear people, or get people into fear. So, but we can look at it to see where are the shadows of this. If Leo at the highest aspect is to live from the heart, to lead from the heart, to be sovereign, to be free, then what are the shadows of that? So the shadows of Leo are arrogance, intolerance, any kind of rulership or leadership that divides humanity, control, needing to have things your way, doing it my way, not being a good listener. So this kind of arrogance is where we see the shadows of the Leo attributes. What I wanted to go through today, because I read through all the gene keys of her signs on Thursday, and the more I dove into it, I was like, wow, this is a tipping point. This is a really beautiful message for humanity to see. Why have we been stuck in governments and rulerships and ways that divide us from one another, that divide us from nature, that divide us from God? Nothing can actually divide us from God. Nothing can actually divide us from nature but ourselves. So what within us do we need to shift that will shift the whole collective in that way? If I was giving this talk 4 or 5 years ago, it would have probably looked a lot different, because I was way more of a fist in the air kind of activist, and believing that my change was me changing the world was going to be out there fighting in a way. And so I probably would have used this time to tell a lot of stories about oppression and injustice. And those are relevant, absolutely. But what I've come to learn in my years of activism is that the most important work that I can do is in my own individual transformation, is in creating peace within myself, is in being aware of my own self. And then from that, like my own family, my own community, and then how I can live my own heart purpose, which is what I can control, that then ripples into the field. So that's what I want to come at today, is like, let's look at this not as a place to judge or shame, but a place for us to look at where we can make changes in our own world, in our own kingdom, and that actually shifts and ripples amazing, beautiful changes out into the world. And if you don't know what the gene keys are, I work in the fields of astrology, human design, and the gene keys. And the gene keys is a beautiful, contemplative, sacred science that dives into our 64 DNA codes, or they call them the gene keys. And each one of these 64 gene keys gives us a contemplation into aspects of our humanness, and how we are human. And so what we're looking at is the shadow frequency. How do we become aware of our shadow frequency, where we're still living in fear in this gene code, and embrace that shadow, fully be aware of it, let it all in. And then that allows us to be aware so that we can rise into the gift frequency. And where we're living at that gift frequency, our heart is vibrating at a higher vibration, and we're sharing this gift out into the world that we're giving from ourselves. And then at the Siddhi is the highest frequency, that divinity that we taste sometimes, and the divinity that we're striving and reaching towards. So when we contemplate that Siddhic level, we're going to automatically start to pull ourselves out of the shadow, because there's something in that Siddhi that reminds us of who we are at the highest aspect. It reminds us of our higher self. So let's look at the day of the Queen's death and what was written in the stars, and what messages can bring us into that higher self. So on the day, on Thursday, the sun is in Leo. Okay, it's kind of at the end of this gene key 7. We move through 5 or 6 gene keys in every transit of the sun. So through the season of Leo, we move through 5 or 6 gene keys. So we were in the gene key of the seventh gene key, which is virtue is its own reward. What's the shadow? Division. So this is when I first looked at this, and like, you can't make this stuff up. So the death goes under the shadow of division and the gift of guidance. There are 2 gene keys that play a huge role in leadership. And you're going to see that both of them are in transit on Thursday, this last Thursday. So division is the shadow, the gift is guidance, what makes a beautiful guide for humanity, and the siddhi is virtue. So let's look at division. This gene key is why humanity still operates in hierarchies. This is the gene key that programs humanity to follow leaders, to want to follow someone else, or be controlled by other people, be manipulated by other people. So that's the shadow of this that creates the herd mentality of like, I've got to follow this. I'm just going to blindly follow the path. I'm going to believe what I'm told. I'm not gonna question anything. Okay, so this is the shadow, the fear frequency, the victimization frequency that causes humans to follow others, to worship others. You can't make this stuff up. It's also the shadow frequency that programs certain people to behave like leaders. Okay, but at the shadow frequency, they're leading from a place of power, arrogance, all those shadows that we talked about before, needing to be in control, domination. They're leading through fear and force and power, not love and inspiration. So here's the thing that happens, because we are all actually one body, like a hive of bees. Okay, so what happens is we feed off of each other in a lot of ways. Okay, so this is what can create a tipping point. It's where we can be aware of what causes division, and how can I change something within me to shift this. Okay, when most of humanity is operating at the lower frequency, we are going to vote in leaders that are operating at the same low frequency. We're not even going to recognize a love leader. What happened when the love leader came to humanity? What happened when the one that had been foretold in indigenous cultures and in from the Zoroaster and the Magi and all around the world, there were visionaries and medicine men and women that received a vision that this chosen one was coming. What is it? Black Elk even called him the chosen one. In indigenous cultures, he was called the fallen star. So what happened when the one love leader came? Most of humanity didn't even recognize him. They murdered him. So when we're operating from a low frequency, we're not even able to recognize the true love leaders. Could be a homeless person on the street that you don't even recognize. That tells us a lot. Who do we worship? We worship rock and roll stars. We worship queens and kings. We worship people that have a lot of money and wealth and dress well. Not that that's wrong, but it's what vibration are we vibrating at when we're not recognizing actual love leaders on the planet. So this is something we can start becoming aware of within ourselves. At the shadow frequency, it's an inability to listen. It's an inability to empathize with others because we're operating at that victim consciousness. So this is where we can be aware of why we have a world divided. And Richard Rudd says it so well. Richard Rudd is who brought us the gene keys. And he says, until leadership demands its highest frequency of virtue, we will never fully see the end of political division and hierarchy. Imagine this. And this one might be a hard one to sit with, but if we're truly questioning everything and really sitting with ourselves, most therapists, doctors, teachers, and yes, even spiritual teachers, most businesses are living through the shadow of division. Most businesses are me, for me. And most teachers, doctors, therapists, at an unconscious level, maybe not a conscious level, maybe just at an unconscious level, they are in the business of this frequency because when they keep humanity at victimization unconsciously, then they're easily controlled, they're easily manipulated, and it keeps them in business. A doctor needs you to be sick to have a business. I'm not saying that all doctors are in this frequency. I'm not saying that. There's beautiful healers that are living from the heart, but we're talking about the collective as a whole. And yeah, we can look at big pharma and things like that and see why we've disconnected ourselves from the natural medicine of nature and the earth, and why we look to something outside of ourselves in that. Why do we look for something outside of nature to heal us? And so this is something that might be triggering, but it's something to look at. As I've known many spiritual leaders that lead from the place of fear. They want to keep you in fear because that keeps you coming back to them for more and more and more. A true leader wants to set you free. A true leader wants you to think for yourself. True leader wants to work with you, sure, support you, help you, and then send you on your way to be free and sovereign and whole. A true leader wants to walk beside you, not in front of you. They don't want you walking behind them. They want to walk beside, okay? So the core of this gene key, the seventh gene key, is the fear of losing power, which has kept humanity in these systems of oppression and hierarchy. Creates dictatorial leaders who demand reliance and manipulate others in a trap that makes them think that they need leadership. Under this frequency, it creates more division and attracts followers who remain in their victim consciousness. So people all around the world are all mourning the death of the queen, and then others are becoming aware of something different. Why do we have a monarchy? Like, if we look at the history of the monarchy, I mean, there's plenty of television shows out there that talk about the monarchy over the years and the fight for that throne. There's been how many wars created over borders and power and domination. So we can use this time as a time to really be aware of that and how we can shift that. Not in a place of judging this woman, because I am not the judge and the jury, but how can we create a world different than this, than monarchies and governments and division? Okay. So the seventh shadow hides the leaders of the new earth. Okay. Each of the shadows of the gene key has a repressive side and a reactive side. So the reactive side of this, is that arrogance. It's where people get the talking about, like, that Leos need to be the center of attention, or they always need to be in control, or that they're arrogant. That is the shadow side of the Leo. Okay. That's the shadow side. And this specific gene key code, the shadow side, is that domination and control, something within a person that needs to feel like they're in control and wants power over people, wants to rule the argument and win the argument every time. People that are argumentative. Okay. Those are kind of easy to spot. It's easy to spot somebody that's living at that shadow. It's connected a lot with narcissism, needing to be the center of things. What creates that? The other aspect, though, is the repressive side. And the repressive side is what keeps the real leaders of humanity hidden. In most of the work I do, I tend to be a spark that brings the hidden leaders out. And I think that that's because of my own journey of being controlled and an abusive relationship when I was younger, and things like that. It gave me this spark that wanted to create sovereignty in human beings and freedom. And so there are so many people that I get to work with that don't even see that they're here to lead because they've repressed that side. Maybe they stay, maybe it's like being, they're in fear of using their voice, or from their own wounding, they stay too small, okay? A lot of our love leaders, and you might be one of them watching, I'm guaranteeing you, because I know some people that signed up for this, you are the love leaders of the future. You're not necessarily going to run for office or want a crown on your head. You want to lead from love. You're humble. Okay. This is the kind of leaders that we need, the healers, the lovers, people that are living from the heart. And a lot of times that is repressed in humanity because of your fears that you're not enough, that you have this dream that you know is going to make the world a better place. You know it, but you're stuck in a job to make money because there's a fear holding you back from it. Like, you know the purpose that you're here for, but there's a fear holding you back that is connected to your wounding. So something for us to look right now at is within our own self. What is the dream that we carry? You know, when I'm reading somebody's soul blueprint, all I'm doing is holding a mirror up to show you who you truly are. And most people walk away from that session and say, oh, yeah, that's who I am. And it gives you like this spark that helps you ignite that path to move forward. That's what we're talking about today. The seventh gift is the gift of guidance. Where are the guides? We're all here. We all have this gift within us. You know, even if it's not in your soul's blueprint, if it's not in your codes, we all carry this ability to lead from the heart. So let's pause and look at the name for this gene key that the sun is in on the day of Queen Elizabeth's death. The power behind the throne. You cannot make this stuff up. Again, this is a handwritten chart in the sidereal. This is not the gene keys in human design that are online, are coded mathematically through the tropical system, because most of humanity is still using that Western tropical system. Okay, we're having a rebirth of the true mathematics of the stars. So that's something that I was just awoken to about 5 years ago, which led me on this path. So if you're still in that system and you're like, I don't understand this, questioning everything as I do led me to this. So I handwrite charts. So in the tropical system, it won't say that we're under the gene key 7. This is, I hand wrote the charts up to see in the true mathematics right now where we were. So in the actual mathematics of where the stars are right now, we're under this 7 gene key guidance, the power behind the throne. Another sign of the sidereal system being in alignment. You can't make this stuff up. So I love this quote. This is one of my favorite quotes. It's in my journal. This is what I want to embody as a teacher and a sister, a mother, a guide. True leadership, like true education, does not impose itself on anyone. It's the gift of being able to help others find their own way forward in life rather than taking away their individual power. So if you are a yoga instructor, a therapist, a counselor, a doctor, a teacher, a spiritual leader, a coach, whatever you're doing, take this into your heart and into your being. We are, the way that we love others is to walk beside them and to help them remember who they actually are, and not to impose our beliefs or our ideas in that way on another person. True education does this. That's why I homeschooled my child. So the gift of guidance is in service for the highest good of all. So if you make it your mission to be in service for the good of all, you are automatically going to bring yourself into this higher frequency every time. If you make this your prayer, I want to guide, I want to lead, I want to live my life in service for the highest good of all. in service for the highest good of all has been my prayer for so many, 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 many years. And it shifts everything. It shifts your heart back into the all, not me, but we. So what makes a great guide are great listeners, to truly listen with your whole heart, without judgment, without opinion, without an objective. There's not a lot of great listeners on the planet. There's just not. We have forgotten how to sit with someone and just listen without trying to tell them what to do or give them advice, judge them, shame them. It's why I shifted this whole thing. I'm not here to judge the Queen of England. You know, I am here to see what's in this for me to embody. Where can I look at what in myself that I'm still living in a fear or victimization frequency? How can I point myself towards the future in a good way? To be a great listener is to truly listen with someone without an objective. Practice it no matter what field you're in, whether it's with your partner, your children, especially. When you as a parent can listen to your child, changes everything. A child that's heard and seen, you're changing their whole entire direction in life. That, no, you're wrong in that, or that could never happen. That didn't happen that way. Children that are sexually abused, when you speak to them later in life, there's been studies on this. One of the things that most of them will say is why they didn't tell when it first happened. I didn't think that you would believe me. Most people say that. Most people that keep abuse a secret, especially as children, have a fear that they won't be believed, that they won't be seen or heard. Take that into your consciousness and sit with that. How many times as parents do we not listen to our children because we're too busy, or because we don't believe them, because they say something that's unbelievable in your opinion? This is where children first lose their intuition. Child says, someone, this certain being visited me last night and told me this and this and this. And you say to your child, oh, okay. And you don't believe them and you make it out to be false, and you disconnect the child from their intuition. Allow the child to have their imagination. Allow them to be heard without judgment. You'll create a bond of trust within your child that can't be broken when a child is able to be heard and listened to. You'll do the same with your clients. You'll do the same with your spouse, your partner, your mother, your father, if you can shift into being a good listener. To be still, to be present, to be together without an agenda. Create a space that inspires creativity, autonomy, harmony. When you embody this gift of guidance, what kind of guide am I here to be? How do I want to guide? You embody such a magnetic presence that when people are in your field, they will feel seen, they will feel loved, they will feel honored, they will feel heard. And they might even gain some clarity on their own heart power, yourself, okay? Can we just sit with each other and listen? So many people are pushing programs on like how to build your business. Like, if you actually just embody the living from a heart, you will magnetize those who you're meant to serve for the highest good of all. Those that you're meant to support. You don't have to even force it. It just will happen. The seventh gene key, the highest aspect, the highest frequency of this. Preparing the world. All right, let's pause again. She ruled for 70 years, the longest monarchy to rule, Queen Elizabeth II. And on the day of her death, we have this tipping point that the highest aspect is repairing the world. Let's contemplate that one. Like, you can't make this stuff up. True leadership is related to virtue. Here is where we find visionary leaders of the future. I have 5 or 6 different friends who are born under this. One is one of my dear, beautiful healers, Dr. Brian with Nourish and Flourish. Some other soul sisters of mine from Rosetta. I have so many friends that are born under this sun, and they're naturally magnetic leaders because they're living from this heart space. And that is the gene key of virtue, is what creates visionary leaders from the future, for the future. How do we build the new earth? Okay. So how do we release virtue into the world? Forgiveness. We embody the art of forgiveness. Big one. I could have a whole entire talk on forgiveness. We can stop talking negatively about others. We can stop gossiping. Okay. We can learn to listen with love and intention. We can surrender fully to nature and create a relationship with her once again, just like a best friend or a mother or a father or a daughter or a son. We can intentionally choose to have a relationship with her again. And by nature, I mean her, nature, all of nature, and the stars. The talk that I gave on the story of the stars is all about that indigenous wisdom of our original relationship with nature and the stars, where we were always guided by her and knew where the stars were. Okay. To surrender fully to nature and to let go of the need to be recognized. Most hidden leaders are not out there. Like the real love leaders, not going to be running for office right now. We wouldn't even recognize them. So they're not here to be, they don't need to be recognized, right? They're just living from a place of love and service, okay? This is the highest gift of virtue. Here's an interesting concept too about the 7th Siddhi. In the book of Revelation, the 7th Siddhi is represented symbolically by the opening of the 7 seals. Dive deep into this 22nd Gene Key if you want to go into this. There's actually a key code on this day that is the 22nd gene code on the day that the queen died. So it's written in her star, the 22nd gene key is coded into this as well. You can't make this stuff up. The opening of the 7th seal is what precedes the return of Christ consciousness. There are some that believe that the vision of Revelation that John had was this, that we're in that 7-year period, starting with 2020 to 2027, this tipping point, this great awakening that's bringing up all of our shadows, all of our fears to the surface. And those fears have been having the control and dividing us. Families have been torn apart in the last few years from the fear of dying, from the control and the manipulation by the powers that be. So the 7th Siddhi is all about the future. The future is about children. This is why Monet and I created Family Alchemy, because family, we are devoted right now to children, to family, to parents who want to be that shift of the future. The future is all about our children. So this Siddhi must manifest through parents and teachers who want to raise and guide their children in virtue, in love, in good relations, to walk in a good way with nature, to be free to be who they are and who they came to be. Okay. At the end, I'm going to invite you all, anybody that really feels called to learn more about all this, not only to understand astrology, human design, and the gene keys, and a deep dive mystical masterclass immersion, but through the lens of your own soul's blueprint. So I'm going to talk about that at the end, but there's 2 group immersions beginning, and one is for the family and one is for the individual. And this 7th gene key is all about those parents that truly feel the calling right now to change the direction, to ripple into the field this new way of being, to raise children to be free and sovereign, who they came here to be, to change generational patterns. Okay, where do you need to take the action in your life right now? This is what we can kind of reflect on the 7th gene key, where the sun was on the day that the queen passed. And where do you need to rise to lead yourself from the heart? Where do you need to live more from the heart right now, not the head? Where do you need to get out of your fears and your anxieties and your what ifs and I'm not enoughs? Or that could never happen. And where are you blindly following, unconsciously or consciously? Where are you afraid to question your own beliefs or the stories you've been told? And why are you afraid to question things? Question everything. It's okay. Wrestle with God. It's okay. It's good. Okay. So let's look at Venus and the midheaven. We're also in Leo. They were in Leo in the 31st gene key, which is sounding your truth. Okay, so Venus shows us where our heart lies. The midheaven shows us a theme or purpose. Okay, and the shadow here is arrogance. Okay, the gift is leadership. The city is humility. Again, I'm like, you cannot make this stuff up. So we have the gift of guidance with the sun and the gift of leadership with Venus and the midheaven. If you've had a session with me, you know that mostly what I look at, like some of the most important aspects of your chart, are Venus and the midheaven, the north node, as well as your sun, of course. So arrogance, okay? Under the shadow of arrogance is the worldwide web of words. What creates this shadow? So this is the shadow that pre-programs humans to follow those who can best manipulate us through facts, language, and words. You can't make this stuff up. Animals choose leaders based on an alpha gene, but in humans, the alpha gene is present in those people who best manipulate through language. In other words, they can use their words to manipulate. History has been told through the lens of men and women and their story, right? And we're taught it in school, so we blindly follow it without questioning anything. In indigenous cultures, stories are passed down in oral tradition. Okay, so I was asked a couple days ago, what books, Sarah, what books can I learn to learn the true history of the United States? Because I'm really being called to understand this right now. I want to understand this. I'm like, well, I learned a lot of them from sitting with the daughters and granddaughters and grandsons of indigenous people. That's where I learned a lot. And then there are some books, but oral history tells a story. So if we've heard the story, if we're taught something through a shadow frequency of wanting domination, control, power, greed, and that's the story we're listening to, this is what calls us to question things. I want to question that. I want to know what's my truth. I want to know what's aligned for me. And the truth is that our own intuition is always here to guide us. Most of us have been disconnected from that, okay? Language has been used as a programming tool to manipulate entire races of people. I had a spiritual mentor that told me, I'm just going to use fear to get them to sign up for my programs, or I'm going to make them afraid. I'm going to use the same tactics as the powers that be. That is not leadership. That is not guidance. That's not the kind of, it is, but it's not the kind that we need. At the shadow frequency, human beings are completely convinced by mass programming in the society in which they live and its collective history, beliefs, and cultures. Our arrogance is based on the belief that we can think, talk, or act our way out of the shadow frequencies. Okay, so this is what's happening in the stars on this day, this transitional day. Okay, the real arrogance comes from being cut off from the divine. Only the human heart can truly offer an answer to the great mystery. And unless your words carry the perfume of love, they're still living in that shadow frequency. Okay. When we're at the shadow frequency, you're still thinking and acting and speaking as if you're separated from nature, as if you're separate from God, as if God doesn't move in and through you. You're blocking that. The actual definition of sin is missing the mark, or like being separate, but thinking that you're separate or acting as you're separate from the divine. So an easy way to shift that is to be aware of that and invite the divine into your life. Invite nature into your life every day as a practice, as a prayer, as a meditation, in relationship. And the core issue that we have that creates division and separateness is our disconnection from nature and our disconnection from God, our disconnection from the ways, which creates arrogant human beings that think that they can control and manipulate. Some of the most abusive people I've known were sweet talkers. People that are in the shadow of narcissism are really good at using language to manipulate. Okay, so that's why we have to tune into our own intuition, use discernment, and be so fully devoted to the divine and knowing who we are that we can spot those things, that we can know those things because we know our truth. So the 31st gene key, this shift is inviting us into the gift of leadership. I know so many of you in my community are the love leaders of the future. I see it. I can see it in a person when I first meet you. Like, whew, this being, it's a powerful love leader, right? We call it heart branding in this way. When you're looking at your gene key sequence aligned in the sidereal, at the top sphere is your life's work. Okay, and that's where the sun is when you're born. Your life's work. And when you've gone through the entire sequence and you've done all the work, okay, to evolve and transform and embody the truth of who you are, and you return to that life's work, it's under the prosperity path then, okay? And if you want to learn more about this, we can talk and I can walk you through this. But when it comes to that, it's your sacred branding, your heart brand, okay? When you're living at that highest. So humanity is ready for heart-led leadership. In the United States, we're seeing it. I am not a Democrat or a Republican because both of those things divide us. Okay, I know what's right. No, I know what's right. And I believe that what we're seeing, if we can take the eagle's eye view and fly above it, we can begin to see like, oh, wow, I'm just on my side over here being right. And I'm just on my side over here being right. And then both sides are creating division. And what aren't they doing? They're not listening to one another. And we've seen this. Look how many families and friends I've lost for now. So many friendships that have walked away from me. How many of you have had friendships walk away from you, lifelong friendships, or had more tension and trauma and turmoil in your families in these last few years? It doesn't have to be this way. Imagine sitting and just listening without trying to judge or control or manipulate or be right. Humanity is ready for heart-led leadership. This frequency is calling leaders who aren't caught up in what other people think about them. They're not seeking to lead. It's activated by those people who have left the matrix, and then they want to support others to leave the matrix as well. They've taken the pill. They get it. They've awakened. And we're going to see that word awaken come up in another key code on this day of her death. Okay. This gift is about stepping out of the mind and dropping in the heart. So how can we live from the heart more? Okay. The gift of leadership, okay, contains the gift of understanding. In the last one, these partner together, these two gene keys, leadership and guidance. Okay. So listening, we talked about before. Now we have the gift of understanding. To be understood, such a beautiful love language, to be seen and understood. This gift draws you out of your victimization and codependent patterns, and it guides you out of your conditioning to being sovereign. It asks us to look at all those limiting beliefs we have, all those ways we've been conditioned, okay? True artists have the gift of heart branding that leads and creates from the heart. It's all about being creative. So the gift of leadership is really about being an artist. It's about stepping into your creativity. My daughter Monet had her first art alchemy immersion last night, which she came up with this beautiful idea. Instead of a sip and wine class, she's guiding these immersions, experiences in groups where she's guiding you to step out of your fear and bring that inner child home that has been ashamed to create or afraid to create or judge their creations, and then to bring that inner child out and then create art together. And it was beautiful. It was this beautiful night of like looking back and saying, when did I start shaming and judging my creative side and stop creating? When did I stop playing music or was afraid to ever pick up an instrument or write poetry or sing songs or make art or whatever it is? What is your art? Think about that. How do you lead? By creating. What do you want to create? What's your heart want to create right now? Okay. At the false shadow side, we have false leaders who use the voice of fear to manipulate people. But at the gift side, we have the voice of love, creativity, and hope. These are our messengers of the future. The gift frequency is being tuned into the heart and intuition. These people have a sense of what's coming next, because when you're living at this frequency, you have become aware. You've woke up from your conditioning. You've started to question things. You're living from the heart. You're not stuck in your head all the time, questioning things, afraid of things, not thinking you're good enough. Okay. And when you've stepped into that and you're living from a place of intuition, then you actually you'll start to know what's coming next. You might even be someone who goes through the thing before humanity goes through it. Okay. I know that a lot of us were sharing stories of actually experiencing a lot of the things before the collective goes through it. That does not make you better than or greater than. It just means when you're woke. The word of woke just has like such a thing to it now. But when you awoken, when you're aware, let's use the word aware. When you're aware, then you might even start to go through things before others. Because in that way, then it's not that you're better than somebody, absolutely not. It's that you've walked that path so that you can walk beside someone else. I am so grateful for all of the suffering that I've been through. And I wouldn't have said that in my 20s, okay? But now here, a few years away from turning 50, I am so grateful for the abuse, for being diagnosed bipolar and being deeply, highly medicated and traumatized by big pharma and by living in scarcity and being homeless and like all of those things that I've been through. I'm so grateful for them because I had those experiences that I got to alchemize.
Yeah.
That
okay, I'm gonna go.
That I got to alchemize, and now I get to walk beside other people. I get to love on them. That's what the gift of leadership is. All the things that you have already been through, when you start to work through them and alchemize them, transform them, that's where you lead other people from a place of love and humility and awareness, because you've been there. If you've lost a child, if you have a miscarriage or you've lost a child, then you're the only person that can walk beside somebody who's lost a child, because how could anybody else know what that feels like unless you, if you've been sexually abused, how could anybody walk beside somebody who's been sexually abused unless somebody who's been there? Okay, you could try, we can be good listeners, but to truly love somebody in that way means you've experienced it and you've done the work to take that wound and create medicine out of it. Okay, so this gift is not about me, and it's about the we as a collective. Okay, your success is synonymous with the whole. Everything you do is in service for the whole. Okay, and in this way, the collective starts to lead itself. We don't need a queen to rule us, or a president, or we don't need that outside of ourselves. We're not going to worship kings and queens anymore. No, we're going to rise up together as a unified force of love. Okay, how do we do that? By knowing who you are and why you're here, devoting yourself to that and living that heart purpose. If you've received your soul's blueprint with me, like, okay, what happened for me and why I got into all these sacred sciences is because when I received the information, it was such an awakening for me to know, yeah, there I am. That's who I've always intended to be. I'm not who she wanted me to be or he wanted me to be. And so you're able, when you receive that knowing of who you actually are, to focus on that. You don't get distracted as much. You're like, okay, I'm on a train here and this is the direction we're going. And I'm going to embody this. And that's how I actually serve the whole. You start to inspire others to be who they came here to be, to share their own magic in the world. And that's what a heart leader is. You lead others by being who you came here to be. Okay. And that city is humility here. You don't lead other people by, oh, well, I've been there, so I know how. Or I know the right way, you're wrong. No, you lead from a place of humility. And that takes true work of living from the heart. Okay. It's called the ring of no return, because true humility has no agenda. It's not interested in enlightenment. It's not interested in being better. It's not interested in being in control. It's not even interested in freeing people from their illusions anymore, because that's what true humility is. You're not trying anymore. Humility is connected to the ancient tradition of the oracle or the shaman, who was a vessel of the divine without any attachment. Okay. Shamans really don't call themselves shamans either. I've met true medicine people and they would have never said, I'm a medicine person. You just knew it in their presence. And they were oracles for me. And they said things that stuck with me more over the years. Some of the indigenous people that I met at Standing Rock, who would have never said, I'm a shaman, I'm a medicine woman. No, they just embodied it, and they truly just channeled things that God, was a message from God to me, things that have still rippled out in my life. So those are the two. That's the Leo. Those are the Leo aspects that were in the Queen's chart on the day of her death. And I'm going to go through a couple more things, because you can't make up some of the things that were here. Hey, Monet, will you hand me just a second? I'll be right back. I'm gonna get something. Just paper. Yeah. Okay, great. Okay, wanted to say one more thing. Okay. So Saturn was at home in Capricorn and the moon is at home in Capricorn. Saturn is restriction. Saturn has the rings, and we think of Saturn as like ringing out things. Saturn comes in and restricts things for us, okay? Saturn is also sometimes connected to death. When we look at people's charts, when people have died, we look at where Saturn has been, because Saturn can be connected with an ending or with death in that way, okay? So Saturn was at home, which means Saturn's ruled by Capricorn. Capricorn ruled by Saturn. They're connected in that way. Saturn was at home in Capricorn. Capricorn is also rules like government, okay? The moon was in Aquarius, side note, which rules humanity. That's how we knew, like, something's going on with humanity. Oh, I said the moon was in Capricorn. That moon is not in Capricorn. The moon was in Aquarius. I did some of this really late at night and like, so Saturn was at home in Capricorn, but the moon is in Aquarius. So ignore that. So I wanted to look at the North Node for you because the North Node points us to where we're going, okay? Oh yeah, I know I wanted to say one more thing. That's what I wanted to say about Capricorn. Get thrown off here. So Capricorn, Saturn's in Capricorn, and it's in the gene key 61. So yeah, gene key 61 is about inspiration. So just so you know that one. But so we have this idea of the death and it connecting with Capricorn or with the government. We can go more into that, but I could have talked on this for like a whole entire day's masterclass. I wanted to just point out the Leo significations. And then I also wanted to see where is it pointing us to, okay? Where are we headed? Thinking about what kind of leadership that we need on the planet. And then let's look at the North Node and the South Node, okay? South Node was in Libra. North Node is in Aries. The South Node is in the gene key 57, which is all about our intuition. It's the most intuitive gate in human design. It is the gene key that involves our intuition, okay? So what holds us back from our intuition, from tuning into our intuition? The one and only thing that holds us back from our intuition is fear. Any kind of beliefs or fears that we have, fears that I'm not enough, that I'll never have enough, that I'm not good enough, fears that I can't do something, fears, all these kind of fears. So the 57th gene key, where the South Node is right now in Libra, that brings up all of those fear aspects that keep us from our intuition. It's located in the splenic center in human design, which is our immunity center, our intuition center, okay? And like I talked about in those first gene keys, it's our own intuition that will lead us to sovereignty and freedom, because once we're in tune with our intuition, we just know what's right. We know what's coming. We know what's best for us. We know who we are. We can sense things, okay? We are intuitive beings. We are created as intuitive beings, but we've been distracted by school systems that told us how to be, by governments that told us how to be, by parents who told us how to be, by outward things that told us how to be, by the media, by television, all these kind of things, stories outside within ourselves that cause us to question our own intuition, to stop trusting ourselves, which is like not trusting God, then not having faith. And so the deepest fears are in that 57th gene key. Okay, the deepest fears of humanity are locked in that 57th gene key. And when we can unlock them, we step into the gift of intuition. Okay, so that's something to look at too. How can we step out of those fears and into the gift of our intuition? And then why is humanity locked into so much fear? Even if you look at the Bible, religion has become such a fear-based organization that uses and manipulates through fear, you know? And then when you actually study the Aramaic and the original, the scrolls, there and in the Bible, there's more teachings on fearing, not fearing. Be not afraid, do not fear. than anything. There's more teachings on love than anything. Love and faith. Okay. So that's the place we've got to get back to, because fear is ruling and causing people to look for rulership outside of themselves. So I wanted to see that. So that's that south node. And then where are we pointed? What's the direction we're moving towards? What's the north node right now? Okay, the north node in your chart will show you the direction you're here to grow into. What's the story we're here to write? Where the south node shows us the story we've already written. So if we look at this, that we're, as a humanity, we can admit that we're still living in the, collectively, we're living in that shadow frequency. So when we look at the south node, the story that we've written, we're looking at that shadow frequency, which is being afraid, okay? Which is, let's see, unease is the shadow of the 57th. And of course, what is unease? Anxiety, nervousness. So that's the shadow that we've been in. And then the north node is the story we're here to write. Okay, points us north. And it is awakening. And we've been talking about this period that we're in is this great awakening. Yeah, the word woke is just like makes people twitch now because it's been overused, but we are in this great awakening right now. Okay, we're moving from the shadow of agitation into the gift of initiative, into this great awakening. So the north node in Aries. Also, okay, Aries is a new beginning. So if we look at, when we're looking at today's chart, we're looking at the collective chart, okay? What's humanity transiting and moving through right now? So this is what we are as a collective transiting through. North node, new beginning, initiating that, balancing this, the horns that balance the left and the right brain. Okay. This is the gene key that holds the energy for unity or division. And what was the sun in? Division. So you can't make this up. If I went even deeper, the 22nd gene key is written into this chart. It's like, wow. So this energy, this code is in the willpower center. Okay, and the shadow of agitation is all about fear. It's a portal for fear. Works with that 57th gene key. It's where you just distrust life. You mistrust life. These are the people that are walking around and they are in fear. They live in fear on like a cellular level. Okay. This is not to be triggering because I too myself lived many years on anxiety medicines when I was diagnosed with bipolar after I was abused. That's what they diagnosed me as instead of PTSD, and they medicated me, and I had so much more anxiety from the medications actually, but I lived in so much fear. I had panic attacks, chronic panic attacks all the time. I know what it's like to live in that. I lived for many, many years of my life having chronic panic attacks. Okay. I know what that feels like, to be terrified to leave the house, to be terrified that I'm always going to be poor, that I'm not going to have enough to feed my family, that I'm never going to be good enough, like all those fears, terrified that I'm going to die, all those things. On a collective level, this shadow is like, we just don't trust life. We don't trust ourselves. We don't trust God, the divine creator, source, whatever your word for it is. We've lost that trust in ourselves and one another, in nature. We don't trust nature to provide us what we need. We look outside of ourselves for that in other things. So that's the shadow to here, okay? This is what creates humans to be prone to anxiety and nervousness, stress, okay? So you're either hiding from life, shying away from life, hiding from yourself, or the reactive side of this shadow is being rushed and in a panic and creating just like a busy super life that creates stress and anxiety and disconnection. We were talking about last night at the art alchemy experience where several of the sisters are brilliant artists, but they haven't created art in many years. Why? Because they've been too busy for it, too busy to make time to create art. which is just sad that we have become so disconnected in that way. Okay, at the shadow level, this gene key is where humans fight themselves and create a lot of competition. It's what creates competition that creates hierarchy, borders and wars and world leaders. Okay, and the media feeds this fear. Media feeds the fear. Okay, it creates a me first attitude. And so this shadow frequency has fed this story of fear. So anytime you're fed the story of being afraid, this is where I want you to go out into nature and tune into, okay, is this truth? I turned off the news years ago. I don't listen to the news. I'm not watching that story that they're feeding me. I'm going to tune in to see within myself. Okay. If there's something that I need to know on another level, God's going to bring me somebody in the world that will bring that message to me if it's meant for me. I don't need to watch the news or be fed those stories in that way. And it's hard with social media, and it's hard because it's in our face all the time. Okay. But if you're fed the fear of story, if something brings up something that terrifies you, that's when we can be aware of the fear frequency and go into our practices that we have that can help us drop back into a place of trust and faith. Okay. I had to put this picture in here now because people are obsessed with the Game of Thrones, and people are obsessed with all the war movies and TV series and things like that. Why? Every one of the stories is about the control and power. Why are humans so obsessed with this story of world domination? Why are humans so obsessed with post-apocalyptic movies and television? The word apocalypse actually means the unveiling. So instead of being like obsessed with what would happen if the world ended, is maybe be looking at your own unveiling, your own shadows, and what you need to look at within yourself. That's the real apocalypse. It's all inside. I had to show that picture. So the gift of this gene key, though, is the gift of initiative, and it's all about being a creative genius, about being a an artist. Your creativity, as I say, is your gift from God, and your gift back to God is to use that creativity. So how do we step out of that, our fears and our agitation in that way, stress, anxiety? We create. We create from a place that creates personal empowerment. We drop into our hearts. We drop in to see what is the dream that I'm carrying right now. And we take a step of faith, a leap of faith towards that. We start having practices in faith and trust. If you need some books on that, message me, because I've got some amazing books on faith that even if you just open any page any day of the week, it will just like spark the light in you for faith and trust. The more you believe in yourself and act from that place of belief, the more life is going to support you. It's only your fear that's holding your back. Okay. It's in this gene key that you're going to meet your deepest fears. And when you take the step to living your purpose, that's where you're going to meet your deepest fear. It's your deepest fears that's holding you back right now. Okay. This gene initiates the path that leads from the heart. This is the North Star. This is what you're being invited to. You and I are being invited into this as a collective right now. We didn't even look at the Queen's death. Okay. If we just look at it as a collective, where am I pointing? What do the stars have to tell me right now? Okay. And if you were raised as a Christian and you think astrology is woo-woo or voodoo or dark magic, I really inspire you to watch the talk that I gave, The Story of the Stars, The Gift of the Magi, the story of Yeshua's story written in the stars, to see how God gave us this as a guiding system, just like all of nature. It's given to us as a gift to be in relationship with. And when it's used in the right way, it points us towards source, divine, creator, God. It points us towards our heart. So collectively right now, this is our North Star that's pointing us towards awakening. towards a great awakening, to stepping out of our fears and moving towards our heart space. And the truth is that you are either awake or you are asleep. And if you are asleep, you must question everything and find that space of tuning into your own heart to wake. Okay. And once you're awake, you can't go back to sleep because you've seen. And it's terrifying to see things. When all the stories were coming up, I've been speaking about sex trafficking for over 20 some years, not human trafficking. And when those stories started to come out a lot more in the past few years, people got angry at me. All of a sudden, they were really angry at me. They're angry at it, at the thing that they've been asleep to. You get angry that you grieve things when you start to wake up, and that's okay. Grief is a part of it. Suffering is a part of being human. And when you stop numbing and you choose to open your eyes and see and look around you and see the suffering, when you choose to be a good listener and sit with someone to feel that person, you're going to suffer with them. It's not going to be easy. It's going to be painful. Okay, when we sit with each other, but it's going to be beautiful, and it's part of our humanness. It's going to wake you back up to your humanness. That yes, my daughter is my blood daughter, and I have a responsibility to break generational patterns that could harm her, right? I have a responsibility to my bloodline, but I also have a responsibility to you because you are also my sister and my brother. This is what waking up looks like. Waking up looks like questioning everything and starting to see the world for the truth of what it is. And yeah, you're going to grieve. Many people are in grief right now because you're starting to wake up and see what's really been happening. Just like the sister that called and said, I need to know what's happened. What's the actual history of the United States? Because I'm actually seeing it now. That there's still reservations here, that the daughters and granddaughters and great granddaughters and grandsons, that those generations, those people are still living on reservations in the United States. What's their story that they have to tell? And you can blind yourself to it if you want. You can keep yourself hidden from it, but it doesn't mean the truth isn't still there. And the only way that we're going to get back to harmony or unity is to listen to each other's stories. So what Standing Rock gave us was a chance for me and my daughter and other people to live there for 7 months, to be in relationship with them for all this time afterwards, to sit and listen to stories, to listen to their stories. Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of stories I listened to of suffering, of abuse in residential schools, of children murdered in residential schools, of relatives, and those schools were still here up into the 70s. And so I met people that ran away from those schools as children, tried to escape and run away. Children who were taken from their homes to be given to white families, these kind of things. Okay, the awakening is going to happen in this way. I hope that you suffer with them. I hope that your heart breaks with them. And then it breaks open to love, to see them, to love, and to walk in a new way, to walk in a good way, as the Lakota would say. And it does hurt. You might think it's easier to numb it all out, but you're just stuffing everything inside. You might think it's easier to work at a job that you hate because it pays the bills, but it's not, because really it's just you're prolonging the actual path that's sitting there waiting for you to follow it. And it's so true that when you decide to take that path in faith, the universe, God, your angels, your guides, the synchronicities start happening, and everything will start to fall into place to support you in that. It's only your fear that's holding you back. there's a book, Soulcraft, that's Bill Plokin, and this is the poem that's in the beginning. The breeze at dawn has secrets to tell you. Don't go back to sleep. You must ask for what you really want. Don't go back to sleep. People are going back and forth across the door sill where the two worlds touch. The door is round and open. Don't go back to sleep. I love this poem. It's profound. So don't go back to sleep once you have awoken. Profound. You can't make this stuff up. I've been writing up charts on big days in history to see what's happening. What's the sign here? Or I go back and look. If you are curious to, as a student of this yourself, if you're curious about the sidereal system, astrosophy, human design, gene keys, if you're curious about your own soul's blueprint and mindedness, if you have a dream that you're wanting to walk towards, I would love to invite you to a group immersion that we're beginning on. I chose September 19th, and then after I chose the date, intuitively went to it, and it's under the sun of devotion. Devotion to our hearts, devotion to our soul's path, devotion to love, devotion to leading in love. So that's the day we're beginning. It could be devotion to your family. We decided to hold 2 group spaces. One group is for your individual journey. So for those of you that are wanting to learn about the sacred sciences and dive really deep into your own soul's blueprint, your gifts, your shadows and challenges, your fears and beliefs that are holding you back, and what is your real theme and purpose of life? What's that big heart dream that you have, and how can we support you to move forward in that? So we're going to dive really deep over 6 months. Every 2 weeks we'll meet, and then on masterclass calls, and I will be teaching you all about the sacred sciences of astrosophy, astrology, as far as like, we're going to dive into what the houses mean, the planets as sentient beings and guides, how to tune into them with your intuition, what the ancients taught us about them, the zodiacs and the whole entire transformational story of the zodiac. We're going to go through that, how that aspects and affects the parts of the body, our emotional and physical body. We dive into all that so that then you know how to read the charts yourselves and understand transits, and can start to contemplate this for yourself, because my prayer and purpose is to guide others to be their own sovereign leaders, to live your own purpose, and you can question everything I have to say. I inspire you to. So we'll be diving into that. And then we'll dive deep into human design, into understanding the system that it is a complex system, but I'm going to do my best to simplify it. That's one of my gifts, is to help simplify it in that way. So we're going to go through all the 9 centers, what the gates mean, how to read the channels, the incarnation cross, the lines. We're going to dive really deep into that, and through your own embodying it through your own soul's blueprint. So you'll have your blueprint that you can understand it through that way, because I think that's the best way to learn something. So this is like a journey of your own soul, but also a class so you can understand these things. So if you're a teacher, a healer, a guide, a yoga instructor, a coach, you can start to really use these things with your clients and as a guide yourself. And then we'll be deep diving into the gene keys, which is my favorite, to really contemplate the gene keys. And all along this 6-month journey, I'm going to be guiding you through what I did today, the transits of what we're actually going through in humanity, so that we can not be ahead of the collective in that way, but be aware of what the collective is going through. So it's a journey, an invitation to journey through your own soul's journey, as well as knowing what the collective is going through, because you're part of the collective, so you're going through that too. So that's what we're going to dive into for a 6-month period. We'll have 2 calls. Let's see, call every other week, deep dive call, and then we're going to have a group space where we can share in between time, and then I'll have different kind of journaling prompts and things that we can go through, and then some extra calls that will come up along the way depending on what transits we're going through. So one group is meant for your individual journey. And then I'm going to have a group that Monet and I are doing together that's for the family. So we'll be doing the same exact thing, but from the lens of relating to family, going through family wounds, not just your own internal wounds, but the wounds of the family. And yeah, and just like really walking towards that, being the family alchemist of your family, which when I left Standing Rock, one of the biggest messages I received, because we wanted to move to the reservation. And then one of my most beloved spiritual teachers told me to go home and love my family. I needed to work on the wounds of my own bloodline before I could do anything else in the world. And so that's what I did. I went home. I lived with my brother and his family, and lived with my mother. And I really just dove into healing those wounds within my own self and my family, which has rippled profound, potent changes. Now knowing that the things that were passed down in my generation, from my grandmother, great-grandmother to my mother, to me, we break with my daughter and her granddaughter. Okay? We're going to do things a different way. And so that family alchemy is all about that, understanding your child's true soul gifts, your child's challenges, how they learn, how they process things, their emotional body, their energetic body, and then how you relate to one another in that way. Okay. So it's been really healing for my family. So I wanted to offer this in this way. So that starts on the 19th. If you have questions about that, let me know. Up until the 19th, I have a little love offering of $111 off of a soul blueprint reading, whether you just want the intuitive astrology human design reading, or you want the full on soul's blueprint, which is your astrology, astrophy, human design, gene keys over 3 sessions where we deep dive. And then you receive your soul's blueprint book that I hand write up. It's like 50 to 60 pages long, and it has all of your charts, all of the interpretations, as well as journal prompts, writing things like that in it. So $111 off of either of those 2 things up until the 19th to celebrate this big group immersion I'm so excited about. And I just want to inspire us all to really drop into the heart now and think about what is our heart's purpose, and using this time as a tipping point. We can continue to be in fear. We continue to worship human beings outside of ourselves and look to others to lead us, or we can connect with our own intuition, with our own heart, and tune into God to know where we're here to lead ourselves, which then ultimately is going to lead others in a good way. So I will put those links up for you, and I'm here to walk beside you, to love you, and yeah, I love you all. Cheers for a good week ahead. We're at a tipping point. I feel it. I feel it within myself and within so many people that I see. I love you so much. I'm going to stop the share here.